Welcome to Sparked,
the podcast where stories ignite confidence.
and bold women light the way.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 5th episode of the Spark podcast. I'm Ellie.
I'm Leah.
And I'm Mira.
We are three freshmen who created the Spark podcast to spotlight female trailblazers who are making a real change in the world.
In each episode, we'll talk to a woman who's broken barriers, built their career with purpose, and most importantly, found their spark.
Today, we are thrilled to be speaking with Sunita Verma, a trailblazing technology leader.
She has spent over 2 decades shaping the future of AI at one of the world's most influential companies.
And is now leading the charge in legal tech as a CTO and one of the top 100 women in AI.
Great. So I think our first question for you is going to be what first sparked your interest in technology, AI, and engineering, and did you have any female role models who, shaped that journey?
Yeah, and maybe I'll start with a little bit of background to say that I am not the person who came to AI or computer science early on in my career. I had limited access to resources, but I first started programming when I was in college. And I think what attracted me to the technology was its ability to solve problems. So that was the foray into the computer science part of it. And when I joined Google in 2007, I joined in large scale distributed systems group. But I sort of started seeing this, pattern on the side, talking to other engineers where people were working on something called machine learning at that time. And what was interesting to me is ability for machines to sort of learn on their own from the patterns in data. And I think that was just a very fascinating thing for me. And I started gravitating more towards sort of both the technology and projects that will enable me to use that technology. And in terms of role models, I would say that um, maybe not specific role models, but I did have a lot of people who supported me, who enabled me. So, and who have guided me throughout my career. And this is one of the things I'm really, really sort of very cognizant of, as well as passionate about, of sort of giving it back.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear how your journey kind of evolved and how you got into AI through curiosity, etc. So I was kind of wondering how, as a woman in a predominantly male-dominated field, how did your confidence and sense of belonging kind of evolve over time, particularly in moments when you're the only woman in the room, and what did that journey tell you about resilience?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I learned over a period of time is one, you have to know your subject well. Whatever subject you are sort of talking about, you have to know your subject well. But knowing your subject is a necessary but not a sufficient condition. You also need to have, especially like the question that you're asking, Mira, is especially when you're the only woman in the room, you do need allies, you do need supporters and mentors who help amplify your voice. And I said, as I said in the earlier, I have been fortunate to have those people who helped me find my voice. And eventually, initially they were the ones amplifying my voice, but eventually sort of I basically realized that, I can do it on my own. And I do have my own place because I know my subject really well. And in terms of resilience, I would say that don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged by few incidents that every one of us will encounter over our careers. And as you step into, let's say, going to college and going to careers later on, you will encounter, because this is, we are sort of interacting in a human society. So important to have that, both understand your subject but also have a network of allies who will help you amplify your voice to begin with.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Having like a support system, I think that's really important no matter how old you are. And I also agree what you said about, knowing your subject. And I like feel like that might be like hard, especially like in a field like AI or technology when, it's sort of always changing. And I guess that sort of relates to our next question, which was how has your path evolved as AI has become more central to society in general, and what has surprised you most about that shift?
Yeah, and I think I sort of I tend to be a I tend to be a technology optimist. So I start with technology, but I also have this curiosity to dig deeper into not just the technical aspects, but second and third order effects of that technology, because that comes from problem solving and applied side of my brain. And especially with a technology like I actually think it's a very general purpose, fundamental transformational technology, and it is going to impact each and every part of the work life for a lot of people. And what it has done for me in terms of how I think about the technologies, I don't just think about, scalability, accuracy, and all the other things that I need to do as part of the technology, but also how do we build products? How do we build guardrails in those products to make sure the technology is getting applied in the right way for the problems that it is solving? And it's less important in the context of the current work I'm doing, but I think it's very important in the context of, let's say, when we start using this technology in societal decision making, when we start using this technology maybe in medical decision making and things like that. So we have to be very careful about what guardrails we put on the technology and how we understand the biases that the technology may bring in.
Yeah, I think it's so cool that you get to kind of work with this really impactful and important use of technology, but you also have to be so smart about how you use it and how you handle it because as you said, like um there just has to be a lot of guardrails and precautions. And so can you share a moment in your career when you questioned your path in tech and what ultimately kept you moving forward and helped you persist through that challenge?
Um, um, I would say sometimes the rate of change with the technology and the sort of the technical progress, but the rate of change at which it can be diffused in the society, in the workplace. And especially at today, the difference is just so large, which means, and what I mean by that is the technology is moving really fast, but our ability of, normal human beings or everyone around us to catch up to that state of the technology is just, there is a inherent mismatch between the two. And I actually think that, and this is something I think deeply about, but I don't think I've done anything specific here, and something on my mind, uh, in the following way. I think educating people about what this technology is capable of, what are the ramifications of using this technology, is something I do think is an important aspect. Something I have started doing, at least as part of my work life, is just basically sharing this knowledge about the technology as much as possible with the people around me. But I think we need a broader effort in this area. And what sort of keeps me coming back is we can actually educate, we can actually share more knowledge and share more fundamental knowledge with people so that they are comfortable with the technology and maybe even get feedback from the broader public on how this technology is helping improve things or not for them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that about educating people about technology and the use of AI. I think that would be really important. And yeah, especially for like us when we're growing up in a generation where AI is super like common, and I think it would be really helpful to know just more about that and how it works. And so our next question is, what qualities do you think make someone an effective leader in today's technology landscape?
So I think I've always anchored on a couple of things I've always anchored on, and I don't think some of those basic principles change, whether you are a leader in today's world or whether you were a leader in the prior world. One, curiosity. You always have to be curious, not only about the technology, but also about the people that you work with, how their lives are going to get impacted by the technology. Second, leaders need to provide clarity and consistency, no matter what environment you are in, and especially when the environment is moving or changing too fast. Um, Getting to clarity in an with incomplete information is something that leaders definitely need to do a lot of. And consistency tends to be important because the people that you work with, they expect, so maybe a little bit of a step back. How do we build trust with each other? We build trust by saying things to each other and then actually following up and following through on the things that we say. And if we are not consistent in our follow through, if I say something to you and actually do this entirely opposite of what I told you, you're not going to trust me the next time, right? So consistency in your actions is an important aspect of being a leader. And maybe one thing that might have shifted with the technology today is just bringing their teams along on the journey of the technology transformation that is happening.
Yeah, I really like what you said about how you kind of have to lead with curiosity and also build with a mind of building trust because you have to be able to build that support system in a group of people that can rely on you and also where you're relying on them, you're learning from them, you're
Yep.
helping, you're building it together as a team. And so since you've spent much of your career solving incredibly complex problems in tech and real world, how do you approach an obstacle where you don't know the answer yet?
That is an interesting and a very good question. And that's something that has happened a lot of times throughout the career. And one of the things I have always believed in is I don't have answers to everything. I'm not an expert on everything. And what I tend to do in most cases is bring the right people to the table for to solve the problem. And what I mean by that is, and again, one of the inherent things you have to do while you're bringing these deep people to the table is make sure their interests are also aligned with what you're trying to solve for. So, setting up a common goal, hey, this is the problem we are trying to solve, and this is how solving this problem will benefit either the company we are working in or the humanity or a specific cause that we are trying to solve for. And this is where your expertise in this area is going to be very, very helpful in solving the problem. And I would say more often than not, if you keep your own ego low, to be humble about it, to say that, I don't have all the answers. I respect the knowledge that you bring to the table or skill that you bring to the table. Most of the times I've been able to bring the right people to solve some of the toughest problems and some of the problems that didn't have a good solution to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's really true about what you said, and also how you don't have to know everything and you don't have to pretend that you know everything because you're working together as a team and everyone has a different skill set. So our next question, sort of related, is um, looking back on your career so far, what achievement are you most proud of and why?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Um, um, hmm. I think I I tend to be a problem solver as well. And for me, solving maybe a little bit of context, I pride myself a little bit on finding solutions that are non-obvious and that can have transformational impact on either industry or a particular area of work and so on. And when I was at Google, we were working on a project, and it's a public project now, where we brought together technology that was just really new at that time. This was basically first time the language models had come out. There was a technology called BERT that had come out, and we basically combined the technology to solve. It was solving an ad problem, but it was solving an advertising problem in a very novel way, and it sort of became the benchmark for the advertising industry from that point onwards. And so, I mean, it was very cool for me to say that and was very see that, and it was very cool for me to hear about that, not only from obviously within the company, but from people outside the company as well, how novel the technique was.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think that connects back to your comment on curiosity and creativity, just like thinking outside the box and really, um, and that leads to such innovative creations like what you just mentioned. And so even as you know, even accomplished leaders experience self-doubt. So how do you handle those moments? How do you handle it today? How did you handle it before? And what's kind of changed?
Yeah, and I think both self-doubt and reflection is part of growing up as a as a person. And I would say I've been, again, fortunate at having worked at places where there was just a lot of coaching provided to think and reflect on your experiences, just mostly to understand yourself, mostly to understand yourself as a leader. And one of the things I tend to do is I tend to actually have conversations with people I trust at that time, and be very honest about those conversations. And hey, this is an area where I don't know I'll be able to do this or whether I have the right skills. And by the way, like it did happen, and in times in my career where I was taking on a new role, and I wasn't sure if I should be taking that role because I sometimes didn't have the background for the role or the exact background for the role. And I did talk to people around me, trusted people that I trust there, and that circle is pretty small. It's and my life partner is one of those people that I trust, but then I also have a close circle of trusted friends that I just tend to talk to in those moments to get their perspective and sort of just have a back and forth. And most of the time, they've helped me understand that um, the you know that the technical knowledge or domain specific knowledge is one part of it, but large part of it is also persistence, motivation, initiative that can sort of overcome some of those limitations that all of us will have.
Yeah, I definitely think, yeah, there's like a recurring theme of having a really good support system. Yeah, and I think that's really helpful and really important, especially today. And our next question
If I
is,
can add maybe just one thing, Leah, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you,
no,
but
it's okay.
one of the things that I have learned, and I have shared it with a lot of women that I advise and or mentor, is the support system is a bidirectional thing. So it's not just you extracting from that system, it's also you giving back to that system. So I think, and there is effort that needs to be put in to keep that network sort of growing and healthy. So I think I just want to say that it's not just extractive thing on my part. It's just, there's back and forth from both sides.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think our next question is what barriers for a woman in technology have you seen, sort of improve or evolve during your time working, and what challenges still remain?
So I think I would sort of put them in two buckets. One is self-imposed, and second is more structural. And in the self-imposed category, I would put things like, women, and I'm not saying this is women only, but it's more predominant in women that women tend to underplay their strengths, and have more self-doubt than a man would have in a similar situation. And that sort of they limit their own ability as a result of that. And second is more structural, which is both coming from, sort of unconscious biases that most of us have, or all of us have actually, as well as, societal expectations that get placed on women. So I think there is a quite a bit of progress I have seen happening in both the sides, actually, structural and self-imposed side. And self-imposed side, again, having role models, having those role models make time for you to help you think through basically your own doubts and so on is important. On the structural side, I do see this lot of awareness in the workplace now of the unconscious biases and how those biases can be mitigated in different situations. And there's a lot of work that has been done in that part of the work stream.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. There's a lot of sexism that's built into the society and how, you know, workplaces are changing, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So, how do you recommend women advocate for themselves when they feel like they are kind of facing that sexism or they don't feel or they are experiencing that they're not good enough? Just how do you recommend women advocate for themselves in those situations?
I think it goes back to the initial question that you were asking in terms of finding your voice. I think first thing is nobody would be a better advocate for you than yourself. So you have to have your own voice. But again, your own voice is necessary but not sufficient because you may not be present in every situation. So you really do need to have people who will advocate for you when you are not present in those situations. So I think, and again, this goes back to the right previous question that we were talking about, which is a lot of times women self censor themselves, and I think that's something that will need to change or has to change through mentoring, coach, and coaching opportunities, and just having more role models around.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is definitely important having more role models around and how the barriers that women face are all like always changing and stuff. So I think this relates to our next question, sort of what does success mean to you now and how has that definition changed throughout your career, as technology is like a constantly evolving landscape.
Yeah. And I would say that early on, obviously, when I was an individual contributor, success was a little bit more black and white for me, which is, hey, I delivered this or I do this well and things will happen. But I think as I have both matured and grown in the career part of it, I think success has become more multidimensional. And it's not just my success alone that I care about. I care about the success of the people that I work with, and supporting whatever motivations they may have, whatever definition of success they may have. That is important to me. And that actually gives me a lot of joy as well as part of my role. But again, it's not just about the workplace. It's not just about the company or the work. It's also about the people around me, both in my personal life, but in that community and society that we live in. So for me, just being able to, in whatever way I can, help people, support people, help mentor people is an important part of where I find joy. Less about success, where I find joy, is important for me now.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting how you talk about success as, the impact and the impact that you have around people in the community and the team that you're building. Um, so how do you hope the next generation of women leaders will do differently from previous generations?
So this is what I think that maybe I'm going to make a general statement first, which is every generation finds its own way and has its own sort of way of dealing with challenges that it sees. But an important thing is to learn from what has happened before. And some role for someone like me is to provide the support to people like you who are coming into the or going to be coming into the workforce, and just then basically provide all the enablement to you so that you can find your own path. You can obviously solve your own challenges, but we need to make you strong. We need to make you provide you with all the resources that you will need to have to be able to take on that work. And that's what I think the role of the previous generations tends to be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like being a support system, not just like in a small community, but for like future generations as well. And so I think we have time for one more question. And our last question is going to be, what piece of advice would you give to girls and women around the world looking to pursue a career, outside of their comfort zone? And how do you hope your own story inspires the next generation?
So one thing that again it's a consistent theme in what we talked about. One thing I would encourage the girls and young women to take risks. And what I mean by risks is, and you set it up that way by saying outside of comfort zone. So there is some uncomfortable situation that it's already there. So not be daunted by those situations. And the way you sort of build that confidence in yourself is obviously, as I talked about, knowing your area, so making sure you understand, but having that element of curiosity as to how the dots connect between what you are doing and between what others are doing. So that curiosity, that perseverance is an important part. And the second important part I would say is basically, again, building a network of people around you who could be your friends, who could be your partners, who could be your work colleagues, and so on. And one of the things I would also mention is I took a very unconventional path into where I am. And I hope that gives people enough, people give a lot of hope to say, it's never a straight line. Your life and career don't move in a straight line. And it's, as a 14, 15-year-old, it's hard to see that. For someone who is on the other side, I can tell you it never moves in a straight line. And it may feel like a big thing when it is happening, but when you look back on things and you sort of try to reflect on your trajectory in either life or career, you would say that, those ups and downs actually taught you quite a bit. And straight line probably wouldn't have been as interesting. So if you have big dreams, if you have big aspirations, I would say pursue them, don't give up on them. And there are people around you who are there to support you and mentor you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I really love the point about how you just have to keep trying and keep persevering, and that's the part of that's the amazing part of life is how you can weave through those paths and how it helps you grow as a person and building on your what you said about having a support system to help you do that. And so I think just everything you said really is truly inspiring and helps so many other women, especially like including me. Like I think this talk has really helped me just kind of feel more confident about myself and really know that I can do anything and I should take the risk, as you said. So thank you so much for coming and talk to us.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. And all the best to both of you and your podcast listeners. This is a wonderful thing that you're doing.
Ms. Verma, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your passion for technology and inclusive leadership with us.
We are so grateful you joined us on Sparked, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
And to all of our listeners, we can't wait to share more stories of incredible women. Thank
Thank
you.
you.